Hello everybody, welcome to this special report. My name is Christian Charlo. Today we're December 31st, 2014. Today folks, what I want to do, I want to make actually our predictions for 2015. But before I talk about our predictions for 2015, let's make a follow-up to see the predictions that we made in 2014. Did some of them pay off? First of all, I was actually bullish on the financial sector because I thought that with the US economy that will continue to do well in 2014, that they will be able to perform well, especially banks that are well capitalized. If we take a look at this year, we have Wells Fargo that actually has performed really well for 2014. I also had Bank of America on my picks. Bank of America did also well. I was also really bullish on the small banks because I was saying that with the stringent capital rules, buffer rules that those big banks will have to hold, well then small banks could expect a lot of upward momentum on them. I actually had Susquehanna Bank shares that I've talked about on December 31st, 2013, and that company here has been acquired. There have also been other banks that have performed so-so. For instance, Fulton Financial didn't play out well as much. It's actually lower than the top it did in 2013. Zions Bancorp as well didn't do really well. Concerning the real estate sector, Canadian Apartment REIT was actually one of my favorite because I was saying that Canadian Apartment REIT, even if they're not able to actually increase their rents in Toronto and New Brunswick, they have some assets there that they'll be able to do so. So far, that company has performed really well in the real estate sector. In the senior housing sector, though, we actually had a Charter Senior Housing REIT that was one of my pick. It did perform also really well. Concerning the biotechnology sector, I was bullish in the biotech sector because I was saying that there were a lot of companies that actually could make some deals with juniors in the biopharmaceutical sector to actually have new drugs because a lot of their patents have come to expiration. Well, ProMedic Life Science was one of my pick on 2013, and ProMedic definitely did really well. The company side also a new agreement with some company recently. So that's a company that we potentially are going to have in an interview during 2015. Affymetrix was also one of my pick. Affymetrix did really well in 2014. So far in the biotech sector, it has been a sector that has actually allowed the NASDAQ index to actually do really well. The aluminum sector, I was bullish in the sector because I was saying that the Chinese economy might spike up. It didn't happen. So Rio Tinto has been a laggard, and that prediction didn't pay off. It actually went down throughout the day. Now concerning Max, let's talk about gold. First of all, Max was actually saying that gold for the first beginning of 2014 will not do well, will not perform well. Well, actually, the beginning of 2014, gold did really well. Finally, we had a massive sell-off, and gold is actually started to decline. The gold sector started to decline. Can the gold sector go up? Well, I think it's not definitely going to be driven by inflation, but mostly by a crisis. If there's a crisis that's happening elsewhere around the world, we might see investors rushing into gold. So for Max was bullish on the gold for the last end of 2014 because he was saying that inflation is going to spike up in Europe. Finally didn't happen, especially with the weak oil prices. So that prediction didn't pay off. He was bullish on Nugget, which is an ETF that tracks the gold sector. So for that bullish ETF didn't perform well and pursue its decline. He was also bullish on the energy sector, though, because he was saying a lot of companies will continue to do money. He has two picks, Canadian Oil Sands and Suncor. Canadian Oil Sands, well, bad prediction there, but Suncor, not so bad, though, because even if it had a correction, so far the stock was able to actually stabilize above that support of 2013. So we have to wait for a new entry point on Suncor, only on the reversal of this downward trend. Of course, the weak oil prices have impacted stocks like Canadian Oil Sands and Suncor. And the energy sector did perform well at the beginning of 2014, but after the drop of oil prices, well, none of them could have escaped this massive sell-off. Concerning Francis, though, for gold, he actually had a target of gold that gold could reach $900. Right now, gold is around 1,189, so he was a little bit too bearish on gold. And right now, gold is staying within a clear neutral formation. He was also bullish on SPY, but however, he expected a massive correction of about 15%. So he thought that for 2014 that the SPY could end up around 147. It was dead wrong in this sense because the SPY actually has continued to maintain a strong bullish momentum, stayed within a clear upward corridor throughout the year of 2014. Now let's talk about sports. Sports We had Ala that was expecting Brazil to win the World Cup. I was expecting Brazil too to win the World Cup, but we finally got a lesson from Germany. And Francis was the one who actually got all the sports prediction right. First of all, he predicted that Pascal will win versus Bure. Pascal did. He predicted that the Broncos will win the Super Bowl. He also predicted that Los Angeles will win hockey. They did. And he also predicted that Germany will win the World Cup. Max, however, was actually expecting St. Louis to win the hockey, and he was expecting Seattle to win the Super Bowl and Argentina to win the World Cup. It was close, but finally Argentina lost to Germany. Now let's talk about our predictions now for 2015. Let's start with oil. For oil, I believe that right now we could actually have for 2015 a pursuit of the decline. Why? Because in terms of supply, it's still really important. We have an oversupply. We have right now the U.S. Department of Commerce that is pushing a lot of companies to start to export liquefied natural gas, even if they have not have some permits. For instance, Pioneer Natural Resources already have some permit, but we know that BP said that they will do so. They will export liquefied natural gas, even if they don't have the permit. So we do have those companies that might export more, so increase of the supplies. We have Iraq, where the new prime minister made some agreement with the Turkish region, so this will increase eventually the supply of Iraq. So all those factors though will make me consider that we're going to have important amount of supply on the oil market, while demand, I don't expect demand to spike up as much to be able to absorb this excess of supply. So this is why I expect that oil will actually continue to go down. And what this will create, this will bring, I think, a wave of activist investors in the energy sector. Activist investors will make companies, first of all, try to cut costs, try to be more efficient. So we might see a lot of deals, a lot of merger and acquisitions in the energy sector. A story like Talisman Energy, which was acquired by Repsol, I think it's a story that could continue in the year of 2015 or so. So this is definitely some type of increased activities of mergers and acquisition in the energy sector that we could expect in 2015. Uranium, I'm also bullish on uranium. Why? Because in China, we actually have a lot of companies, a lot of plants that are being built in China. Japan will restart their nuclear power in 2015. The new prime minister that has been elected, Mr. Shinzo Abe, with the majority in parliament, will have the leeway to actually push for some reforms to diversify the energy portfolio of Japan. So I'm definitely more bullish on the uranium sector, even if it's actually having a decline. I expect a strong rebound in the sector because of the increased activity of China with the building of nuclear plants and because of Japan. Russia. Weak oil prices, of course, will impact Russia. I don't think that the Russian economy, the Russian government will default on their debt. Yes, there will be heightened volatility on Russia, but I think that weak oil prices will only bring Russia on the table of negotiations and try to not create as much, I won't say chaos, but that much trouble in East Ukraine because the West doesn't really like it. So we have RUSL and RUSS, which is the bearish ETF for Russia, RUSL, the bullish ETF. I think those two are going to be definitely worth to be watched for the year of 2015. I expect the Russian economy to be in recession for this year, but not to default on their debt. So I actually believe that Mr. Putin will do everything he can because they have so much foreign reserves that they'll do everything he can to actually support the economy and make sure that the Russian economy actually does less bad than some analysts would expect. So I think RUSL, the bullish ETF, is still worth to be watched, even if RUSS, so far I think, would represent for the first beginning of the year a greater opportunity on the upside. Also VIX, because I think there's going to be heightened volatility in the market. We have Congress that's Republican, a Senate that's Republican, and we have President Obama, which is Democrat. I expect that he's going to use his veto power for some of the bills, which is going to create a lot of uncertainty in the market. We have the elections coming out in Europe, especially in Greece. This will create, again, some volatility in the market. So I think that the VIX right now, TVIX, I expect that it could actually rise for 2015 because of this heightened volatility. And also take into account that a lot of emerging economies, too, are doing some reforms, which will impact eventually how S&P 500 companies generate their earnings, because almost 40% of the earnings are coming from those emerging markets, especially countries like Brazil, they have to go to some reforms. So South Africa as well. So those countries are definitely going to add them to some volatility as well. Concerning the banking sector, I actually am really bullish on the banking sector. Even if we have the Volcker rule that will come into effect, there's some gray areas. So banks will be able to mingle around those gray areas. So I think they'll be able to continue to make some money. Yes, there are tougher capital rules, but I think that with having put aside the litigation with some frauds that happened over in the banks in the 2008 and for the Libor, for instance, I think that those banks will be well placed because they have this economies of scale to be able to actually continue to loan. And I think this is something that they'll be able to do, especially in emerging markets, because there's still a lot of consumers there. So those banks might actually do well because they have this economies of scale to penetrate those markets, even if there actually have a lot of protection measures in those emerging economies to favor local champions. So I'm bullish. I think FAS will actually do well on New York, which is an ETF that tracks banks. Small banks have to be watched too. I'm also bullish on them. I keep my same recommendations of 2014 because with the more stringent capital rules that those big banks have, I think small banks will benefit. First of all, they can adopt technologies faster, and also they don't have the same stringent capital rules, which means that they can loan more. More people are having jobs, companies are investing in the US, the economy is doing well, comparative to the rest of the world. So I think that those small banks will be there to benefit and to continue the growth in credit that is necessary to fuel the American economy momentum. So I'm bullish on KRE, and I'm also bullish on FAS. For real estate, I don't expect that interest rates are going to change in 2015. So I think that real estate sector are going to do well. One company that I like a lot is RioCan Real Estate, simply because this company here, what I've been able to do is that they have some properties where it's retail and multi-residential. Multi-residential, it's the type of sector in the real estate sector that doesn't vary as much. It's not really as interest rate sensitive as the retail side. And what they have done is that they have some properties where they have some retail, like some commerce, etc., that are there, and also have some multi-residential properties that are there. So I think this kind of diversified portfolio are placing them well for RioCan Real Estate to actually continue to do well in 2014. And one reason why I believe that interest rates are not going to surge much is because even if the economy is doing well, the wage growth is not there. And we know that Ms. Yellen, Fed chairman, is definitely sensitive to that, and she wants to see Americans actually having an increase in their wages and not simply having some jobs where they have the wage are stuck, right? And we have also Allied Property that I believe could continue to do well in the multi-residential sector. In the office sector, but there's a risk because there's still an oversupply of offices. So Allied Property REITs, I think that they might do well, but not as much as a stock like RioCan. I'm more bullish on RioCan for that. And the senior housing living sector, though, we have seen a lot of consolidation in the recent few days. Extendicare, this massive drop here is because they had a settlement that they had to agree with the U.S. government. They did pay that money to the U.S. government. The stock is right now at its low of 2013. I believe that this could be maybe a potential acquisition target because there's still a lot of consolidation in the senior housing living sector. So for the REITs overall, office properties, not so bullish, but I think Allied Properties could do well. And on retail side, I like RioCan and real estate because they have a diversified portfolio of not only retail but also multi-residential properties, which actually are less interest rate sensitive. And I don't expect interest rate to go up this year. Now, let's go for Max. Max, what does he expect? He actually expects the Fed that they will increase their interest rate at the third FOMC meeting in 2015, so or around June 16 or 17, so the fourth meeting. He expects interest rate to actually reach at least 1%, so 3 increases of 25 basis points. So you should watch TBT if this happens. On the reversal of this downward trend, TBT is the ETF that will allow you to track a potential increase in interest rate. He expects also a lot of volatility on the market, but he expects that the market will continue to do well, at least to have a plus 5% concerning 2015. So the SPY, he expects that the SPY can pursue its rally for 2015. Now, concerning oil, Max expects oil to stay weak. He doesn't expect that the OPEC countries will actually decrease their production, actually thinks that it's going to create a lot of problems in the medium to long term. And he sees that the fact that companies have actually cut down in their capital spending, that eventually we're going to have a supply problem. So he expects for that oil could actually rebound, and for the end of the year could reach almost $75 a barrel. That's max production. For gold, he definitely has no real opinion. He thinks that it's definitely going to be a crisis that's going to allow gold to actually have a rise in 2015. Now, concerning sports, Max expects Team Canada will beat the United States on December 21st to win the first gold medal since 2009. He expects Seattle to again win the Super Bowl, and he expects Chicago to win the Stanley Cup. Now let's go to Francis. Francis, what he expects for the S&P 500 though, he expects the S&P 500 to have a correction. He expects that S&P 500 could actually reach almost 155. So that's about here. Oops, almost here. So almost all the gains of 2015, 2014 will be erased, according to Francis. And because of that, he said that you should definitely continue to watch TVIX, and he expects TVIX to do pretty well. The VIX, not TVIX, the VIX. He expects the VIX to do really well. He has a target for the VIX at least at 50 points. So that's actually something really interesting for VIX if actually this scenario of a correction of 25% does play out on the S&P 500. Now, if we continue here for oil, Francis has a target. He expects that oil around $46, $48 will have a rebound, and that will be a bottom for oil. He doesn't expect oil to go below $48. For Couche-Tard, Francis expects Couche-Tard to be acquired. It's a solid company, but that's what he expects. And for sports, Carl versus Dallas will win the Super Bowl. Jean-Pascal will lose against Sergey Kovalev. Lucien Boutte will retire, and Adonis Stevenson will lose its WBC belt. And for NHL, he expects that the Duke of Anaheim will win the Stanley Cup, and Canada will win against Sweden. Max expects Canada to win against the United States, but Francis expects Canada to win against Sweden. So those are our predictions for 2015. Folks, I want to thank you all for all the team, for all your support, for the fact that you have always been there for all our chronicles. And we'll see you at the end of 2015 to see how our predictions play out, and we'll make also our predictions for 2016. Thank you. Happy New Year, and a lot of health and a lot of love. See you next.